When I realized that everything is this field where we can travel and everything is happening at the same time and all possibilities are exist at this moment, and essentially it's just your ability to travel from one point to another in the reality, you start questioning first, how do you do that? And then you understand, once you know how you do that, your life is no longer the physical actions that you take, the emails and the call somebody, and you still keep doing that, but those things come from not the place of hustle and a grind, but the place from you get the idea and you do it, and that idea comes specifically to move you closer to that reality that you want. Everything changes in a way that's why I visualize and meditate an hour a day at least. I know that this hour will bring me closer to whatever I want much faster than me spending this hour doing the actual work.
Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Wei Tim. I'm the founder and host of Founder Meditation. Today, we're very happy to welcome Alexandra Eidens with us today. Alexandra is the co-founder and CEO of Big Life Journal, a company dedicated to promoting a growth mindset for children through journaling and educational resources. Alexandra started the company with her husband Scott in 2017. And since then, they've grown this company into a brand with millions of followers on social media. And what's even cooler is that they're actually running this successful startup with a remote team while traveling all over the world with the entire family. So that is super impressive. And while they're doing that, they're also making a huge impact in the world, influencing millions of families and children positively. So Alexandra, welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Yeah, very excited about this as well. So before we begin, maybe you can just share a little bit more about how you started the Big Life Journal. And by the way, we're actually happy customers as well. So
nice.
we've actually bought these two journals for our 9-year-old daughter as well. So very happy to have you here.
Amazing. Sure, I can share a little bit of a story of how we started. So it was in 2017, and it was the period when I was still working full time. I was working in New York City in finance, and I was dreaming of becoming an entrepreneur. And I was trying lots of different businesses, lots of different projects on the side. Every weekend I was doing something. After work I was doing something, and Scott was helping me the entire time. And we basically were spending all our investments and all our salaries on trying to start businesses. And maybe in total I started 5 or 6 different projects. All of them failed, successfully failed, but we never gave up. One of these projects was a journal. So we decided to create a journal for children, a growth mindset journal, because both of us were very much into personal development. We were all, attending all the seminars, we were reading all the books. So we decided to create something for our future children. And we started with a Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding campaign. So the first Kickstarter for the first journal also failed and we had to cancel the campaign, but we decided to try again because there were some people buying and investing in our project, and these people were not our family, and they gave me hope. That gave me hope that, you know what, I think that people might be interested in this. And we closed our first campaign that failed, and we started to learn about crowdfunding. We hired consultant, we took a course of crowdfunding to understand what it takes to raise money, and basically we started again, and the second time we were 150% funded. And then it all began from there.
That's awesome. So how does it work? There's a physical journal that teaches children about positive and growth mindset. Can you very briefly walk through how does that work?
Yes. So we started with a journal. So that was our very first product. Then we expanded into different ages, and now we have even an adult journal. And they're all guided, science-backed, basically based on positive psychology, growth mindset, mindfulness, all those sorts of things. And also after that, we expanded into other products. Right now we have affirmation cards, conversation cards, which are also extremely popular popular. And also we have a subscription, a membership, which is a platform for parents who want to educate themselves on how to raise confident, resilient children. So it's a huge platform. It's very extensive, and now we're focusing on that as well.
Fascinating. So the products are no longer just for the children in the family. It's also for the adults, for the parents as well.
Yes, and also for actually what we learned is a lot of schools use our resources. A lot of progressive schools, they buy journals in bulk for the entire classrooms. And a lot of professionals, therapists, psychologists, they either buy memberships to our platform or they buy the journals as well. So it's a wide range of customer base.
Interesting. And one thing that I'm very impressed about is the social media presence of the Big Life Journal. You guys have millions of followers on social media. And I noticed many of my smart friends who are also parents, they just happen to be an avid followers of yours as well. So can you share just briefly how you've done this and how you view social media as a channel?
So now for us, social media is a big part of our brand, and we've been investing in social media very intentionally. And that's how we are basically recognized by a lot of customers. They remember us from our social media, and then they end up trusting us more to purchase. So yes, it's a conscious effort. It's intentional strategy. It's a big part of our marketing. We use social media to build the brand, but also to expand our email list, and to also we use automated chatbots to also educate about our brand and sell. So we use it in many different ways.
Yeah. Is there any particular channel that you focus on? Is that primarily Instagram or YouTube as well?
Instagram is a big one for us. Facebook as well. I would say Instagram and Facebook are the big ones.
Okay.
We tried a little bit of TikTok, and we still try. Not there yet. YouTube we also tried, and maybe eventually we'll expand. I also like to focus and do what's working, and kind of like do the 80-20% rules, to see what's working, and investing 80% of our effort into the 20% that is working.
Yeah. So personally, because we spend a lot of time in terms of founder-led marketing for my company on LinkedIn, because our company is mostly B2B. So I'm looking into founder-led marketing quite a lot. And I've actually noticed that you yourself have hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram. In the tech world, right, there are many founders who are leaning into founder-led marketing on LinkedIn and social media. So I'm sure there's a lot of interesting experiences that you can share among the founders. Another thing is that, interestingly, I noticed that in spite of your social media presence, you aren't really the face of the Big Life Journal. As in, if I go to the Big Life Journal Instagram account or Facebook account, the account shows two ladies, but they're not you. Can you maybe share more about how you guys think about this?
Yes, this was intentional, and for many reasons. The reason number one is I did not want myself to limit us in terms of my time, and also my limiting beliefs of what I can do on social. So every time, let's say like we have an idea of something, or we see something that we want to create, we have this personal filter that kind of prevents us sometimes from doing it. So like, can I do this, or am I going to look silly, or is it like the right image for me? None of that I wanted to be a limit for our company. And for me, I love generating ideas, and I love to create strategy, but I don't want any personal limitations to stop us. And when it's not about me, but it's about other person, it's much easier to implement. And also for these ladies who I found, who are the faces of the brand, they are also not so personally invested because it's not their company, so it's their job. So there's much less personal limitations and personal beliefs, and as a result, we are much faster, we're much more diverse in the content we create, and we're much more fearless. And the second reason is also time-wise, because as a founder, like, you have limited time, and sometimes like when urgent things happen, social media and the content production is not on the top of your mind, and you just have to deal with the situations, and as a result, you're again limiting yourself and you're limiting your company growth because of that. So again, I never wanted me to be the bottleneck. I always wanted to have a very smooth smooth process, a very consistent creation, very high quality creation, people who can focus on this work, who can invest their time, who are paid to do this, who are responsible for that, and also don't have any personal limitations on the type of content they can create. And also intentionally, I have two people because, if one person leaves, there's still, that second person who is remaining, and there's some consistency in the account. And then another new person comes, and then the audience has time to get to know that second new person. So it's always, it's better to have two people, and it's better to have people who love creating content, who love doing it, and who are up for anything. And these are the people that I have. Essentially, whatever idea we have, they're up for it, and there's never any personal limitation in it. So yeah, it's totally intentional, and I think we're thriving because of that.
That is fascinating. The last 3 minutes sounds like a mini masterclass for me, because myself included, I'm sure many founders, speaking of limiting beliefs, there are founders who have the limiting beliefs of it has to be the founders who will do it because the founder is the only person who will never leave the company. If I were to ask an employee to head the business account, what if they were to eventually leave the company? So while you're saying that, I noticed that it's actually a limiting belief on my end for many other founders as well. But it seems like there are tactical ways to get around that.
Yeah, and we actually had a person leave. So we had that situation when we had one of the two people left, and then we had to bring in the new person, and it was such a smooth transition. Nobody noticed as much as such, and that's why you have two people.
Yeah, I also noticed that on social media, you guys share tons of amazing, helpful parenting tips on social media. How about newsletters? Does newsletters serve a different purpose?
Yes, we have newsletters. We have a very large, over 1 million subscribers as well. And it's a big portion of our business as well. And we use social media to feed into our newsletters. So we use social media to bring in the cold audience to subscribe to our newsletter. And then we warm up with a lot of content as well in the newsletters. And we send 4 a week, different content. They are based on ages and based on preferences. So you can subscribe to all 4. You can subscribe to 1. And we also send a lot of, we have a whole department that is producing just free content constantly for the newsletters. So besides just the, let's say like a parenting tip, we also send a lot of guides, like a printable 1-page guides or activities for children. All of that is a free content. And then eventually it has multi-purpose. So eventually it goes into our subscription platform. And also it is used as lead magnets on social. So whatever free content we produce, we have at least 3 purposes for every single piece of content. But we've been doing this since day 1. For 7 years, every week, we've been sending free content. That's how we've been able to grow to over 1 million subscribers with very high open rates.
After 7 years of hard work, sounds like you guys have an amazing flywheel going. Millions of followers on social, over 1 million subscribers on newsletters. For any aspiring new entrepreneurs who want to go into the e-commerce world, what would be your advice on social media as a growth channel?
Okay, so I think the strategy is pretty simple and it works for everyone. So whatever your niche is or whatever your industry is, you have to do your research constantly. What content works for that specific niche? And it has to be, for us, it's parenting, for example, or it can be skincare, or it can be, I don't know, like in the B2B world, I mean, you'd have to do your research, like what people are responding to. Then you basically have to create a content production team and content production process where you produce that same content in your own way. But for social media, it's easy in a way that you always know what works. And what works is you go to recommendations and you see what works. Instagram is showing you exactly what is working in the moment. And you don't even need to invent anything. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're constantly on the lookout. What are the trends in parenting? What are what is everybody filming right now? What is doing very well right now? And we are in constant production of that same content in our own way with our own people. And we're essentially just building our presence that way. And then it's not the content production for the sake of content production. We have a very strong path of how we are leading people from viewing our content to getting our lead magnets in the back end and to getting our newsletter in the back end. It's a system you have to build. So basically, before you create your content team, make sure you have that back end set up so you know exactly what you're doing and why you're producing things. Because there are companies that have following, but they don't necessarily have that second step where what are they doing with this following, how they funneling that following into their email, for example.
I've been listening to a few DTC founders interviews recently. Some of them do mention that for any new product that they create, they try to make the problem to be as problem solving as possible, as in think of that particular product would actually be a solution to be an actual pain point. Is that how you think about whenever you guys are launching a new products within your company? Is that the framework that you follow as well?
So we have a very close contact with our customers. We constantly do surveys. Constantly, we have a post-purchase survey. We have a very large Facebook group, which is a private group over, I don't know, maybe 300,000 people at this point, where we constantly survey them as well. And not in a way that like, what product do you want, but exactly that question. What is your biggest pain? What is your biggest hope? And we have spreadsheets of that kind of data, and all the product creation comes from that. For every product we have a research document where we have these are the pains, these are the hopes, and this is where we are meeting with this product. And as well as marketing is always based on that. So every launch, every marketing campaign has a very extensive research document behind it, and we use exact wording, we use exact phrases that our customers are using to create the products and to market them as well.
I'm a subscriber to your newsletter, and I was surprised to read about topics that are basically related to manifestation with a hint of spirituality all the time. And is that the main newsletter of the Big Life Journal? Do you have multiple ones?
Yes, this is one of the 4, and this is my personal one. That's the Sunday newsletter. This is for broader audience. You don't even have to be a parent to be part of it. If you buy our adult journal, you automatically subscribe to it, for example. So this is one of the 4, and this is the one that is written by me, basically, personally. It is about mindset and spirituality and abundance and meditations and affirmations, all of that.
Yeah. You also have a podcast called Reality Creation. Can you share a bit more about that as well?
This is also part of my personal brand. So it is, I would say, a little bit different from Big Life Journal as a company. My goal is to eventually do more of that, more of the personal brand projects. And in 2025, January, I'm going to start much more actively in that area. And it is more about my passion and what I have learned over the years and what I've been experiencing myself. A little bit that information also leaks into Big Life Journal content as well. But a Big Life Journal content is a little bit more practical, day-to-day parenting struggles and kind of like something for a broader audience, whereas my personal is a little bit narrow audience in a way that if you are into manifestation spirituality, you might be interested in that.
Yeah, it's actually one of the reasons why it got me noticed that you're also into this topic. So I think it's a good segue for our next topic about your spiritual journey. Maybe you can share a little bit more about your spiritual journey and how you get on to the pathless path. Yes, so my spiritual journey has begun a long time ago. When I was in my 20s, I was living in Czech Republic at that time, and I was working in a big company. It was a very successful company, and I was earning good money for my 20-year-old self, and I was living in a beautiful place in the best neighborhood of Prague, and everything was going fine, but I was extremely miserable. And at some point
and I remember that moment when I was sitting on the couch all by myself in my apartment because I lived by myself, and I said out loud, "I need help," and almost like for the first time, I kind of said it out loud to the universe, like I need help. And then let's say I don't know, a couple of days after, I walk into an English bookstore, and the first book that lays on the top of all books was The Secret. So I bought The Secret and I started reading The Secret, and that was my very first moment where I even learned about this world and like what is the power of your thoughts and mind and manifestation and all of that. So, and that kind of really helped me. And then over the years, I was introduced to all the different books and all the different studies and authors. And eventually I was introduced to Joe Dispenza, and I was introduced to Eckhart Tolle. I read all his books and the Conversations with God and all of that. So kind of like walking the path that many people walk and learning more and more about, what is really going on in this world.
Can you share how your current practice, do you meditate regularly? How does your current practice look like?
Well, I would say that currently I'm still going through another transformation moment, I would say. And they never end, really. There's always one after another. You think that you have learned everything, and then suddenly you realize you haven't. And there's another layer to all of that, to the reality. So at the moment, I do a lot of visualizations. I do meditate and visualize, I would say at least an hour a day. And it's a commitment. Like to me, it's a goal. I said an hour a day, I meditate and visualize. And I also, I would say I have a much broader understanding of what reality is. And I don't think it's the final understanding. I don't think our mind, the human mind, is capable of fully grasping what is happening around us and how it's all made up and how it's all working. But I'm much more aware of what is going on than I was even, let's say, like a year ago. And again, it's just one book after another, one interview after another, one conversation after another. You learn more and more and more. And it's a pathless path. It's not leading you anywhere. It's just I guess you're just realizing more and more of what the reality truly.
Yeah, let's double click into that. Maybe can you share a little more about what understands? It might be hard to describe, but when you said that the reality as you understand right now is quite different, can you maybe share?
For example, yeah, for sure. Like, for example, I'm learning to live with the understanding that there is no time, for example. There's always internal now. There's an illusion of time. There's an illusion of past and future. So, and everything that you want or happened will happen or is happening right now. I'm also learning to live with the understanding that everything is one, we're all one, and, basically not this personality, but you are let's say, so to say, like in the entire screen of everything that you're seeing around you. So all these different like big concepts, I'm learning to, first I'm asking myself, what does it mean? And like, what does it mean? Like, how does it change anything, or does it change anything? And I'm learning just to be like, just to be an observer, but not even an observer, because it implies that there is somebody who is observing, but just to be the entire screen. Like every time I'm bringing myself back into the present moment and remembering and reminding myself I'm not a person. Like this is not who I am. I'm everything around me. I'm this tree. I'm this rock. I'm this dog. I'm this leaf. I'm the wind. I'm the sun. And kind of like always constantly being this spaciousness and like everything around me. And that is the current, I would say, practice. Yeah.
So for the listeners who may be new to this world, can you share a bit more when you say that you perceive there's no time? Can you please share more about like why is that?
Well, I mean, I'm not maybe the best person to describe exactly. I mean, it all comes back to quantum physics and all the things that have been proven by many scientists. The recent book that I really enjoyed was called A Happy Pocket Full of Money. I mean, it is about abundance, but it has a very strong explanation of quantum physics and the world and the reality that there's no time, no space. There's no time, there's no time, no future, no past. And it's a very solid explanation. So I really understood it. And our mind needs to understand these things to believe them, right? So even though the reality as it is cannot be understood by our mind because our mind is very limited, but some things our mind still can understand that can help us, believe that it is actually true. So I would advise for people if you're interested in learning more about that, to look into books like that, or just to understand a little bit more about quantum physics, or what is the observer effect, and how some people or sometimes in space you're able to travel to the past moment, right? So all these things. It was a very good analogy of, imagine there's a huge limitless field, like a football field, for example, and everything that has happened, will happen, or is happening right now is like a little speck on this field. And basically what you're doing is you're traveling from one speck to another speck, and to you you are traveling in space, and to you it feels like the time has passed, but in fact there is no time, because everything is in this field right now at this moment existing, and you're basically just traveling from one location to another location, and that is what is happening essentially. So that's what it means. There's no time, there's always internal now, because everything exists in this moment, and we're just basically moving around in space.
You also mentioned that you don't perceive yourself as a human being. While this concept is not new to me, for others who are completely new to this podcast, can you shed some light on this?
Well, I mean, it all comes back to like so many internal teachings, right? So certainly nothing is my own idea, but it's the understanding is there's no such thing as a self, but everything that is happening, like everything, the speaking, the movement, the thoughts, they're kind of like an independent entity, so to say. They're just occurring in space, and the mind who is analyzing everything is kind of thinks that it's coming from you, or this is all happening is done by this human. But in reality, we are much more than these events or these things that are happening. We're much more than this individual that we think that we are. We are the entire space, and we are almost like a screen that is, if you imagine the TV screen, for example, where the movie is playing, and yes, on this TV screen there is this main character and there's the supporting characters, and something is happening all the time. We always think that we are this character, but we are actually the entire TV screen. So if you kind of think it from that perspective, it's much easier to live life, and you're not so much invested anymore in everything that is happening, because you're realizing that it is just essentially a movie playing on the screen that is you, and you the entire screen, and you're not only this character, you're everything. It definitely takes time to really grasp this idea, and it takes a bit more time to really embody.
Is this something that you have been experiencing a long time, or did you start having this realization?
I think so. Well, I mean, not a long time, but let's say maybe within the past year. And also, I had this interesting experiential event where I actually was able to observe. There's two specific times. The one time I was able to observe myself speaking without me doing the speaking. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain, but the speaking was happening, but at the same time, my mind was thinking about that speaking, and I even had that thought, like, who is speaking? Like, where is this coming from? And then I realized it was coming from my body, and the speaking was my voice. So that was an interesting experience. And the second was when I fell asleep, but my consciousness was awake, and I was specifically hearing myself sleep, and I was hearing myself like snoring a little bit. I felt my body sleeping, but I was awake, and that was another interesting point where I realized I am not my body, because my body is sleeping, but I'm awake and my consciousness is separate from my body. So those are like the little moments where I think as you get on this path of trying to learn who you are and what really is happening in this reality, you start getting these experiences. They come to you. Those kind of things happen to you, and sometimes it could be, kind of like disorienting. When this was happening to me, I was disoriented. I was like, what is going on? Because you're essentially your preconceived notions, all the beliefs that you had, all the firm understanding of this reality, this is the physical reality, the three-dimensional reality we live in, starts crumbling. You start experiencing a different level of reality, and that's when you really don't just believe, because you experience it, and when it's much stronger than a belief. Or because when you read something, when you read about this, you're still not sure if it's 100% if it's true, but when you start experiencing things like that, then it's the knowing.
Yeah. Has this realization had any impact for you as the CEO of the company?
For sure. I mean, tremendous. I think that when I realized that everything is this field where we can travel, right? And everything is happening at the same time, and all possibilities exist at this moment. And essentially it's just your ability to travel from one point to another in the reality. You start questioning. First, the question is, how do you do that? Like, how do you travel, right? From one point to another. And then you understand, once you know how you do that, your life is no longer the physical actions that you take, like the emails and the call somebody, and you still keep doing that, but those things come from not the place of hustle and grind, but the place from you get the idea and you do it, and that idea comes specifically to move you closer to that reality that you want. So it's just the everything changes in a way that, that's why I visualize and meditate an hour a day, at least. I know that this hour will bring me closer to whatever I want much faster than me spending this hour doing the actual work. Yeah, everything changed for sure.
Speaking of visualization, you also talked about law of attraction, and the book The Secret was something that got you started on the spiritual path. The Secret and also the law of attraction has sort of some negative connotation in certain communities, where they may think that this is just about thinking yourself into becoming rich. You should roll out your sleeves and execute things, right? So I think in some community, particularly in the more analytical minded folks, a lot of people view it that way. How would you respond to those healthy criticism?
I think, Secret as the book is just the mass produced book, which could speak to masses of people. It's like a first very surface level, and of course, like it's much more complicated than that's how it is described in the book specifically, but it's a great introduction. Like for me, it was just like, oh, okay, this world exists and I want to learn more, and you start going down the rabbit hole. I would say that if you start thinking about, there is this quantum physics that has been proven, and a lot of people received a lot of Nobel prizes for in this field, and there is these internal teachings of religion, and they all kind of speak about the same thing, that we all one and there is no time. And what does that mean in my own life? Like, what does that mean? And it's almost like trying to understand how this reality works, because when we were born and raised, this is not something that was discussed, or we've never been questioning this. How does it all work? What is it? Like, who am I? And what is this around me? And how things happen? And once you start really questioning this and asking these questions, and then even if you just ask them in your mind, you start getting answers through books, through people, through, like, hear your thoughts here and there, you start listening to certain things and you start learning more and more about that. I would say if you are skeptical, and that's okay, but try to investigate and see, like, what is the reality? Like, how do things happen? Like, is this all randomness, or like, is there a law to this, or is it like any rules to this? And how can I learn these rules and laws, and how can I use them? So it's just basically, really grasping and trying to understand, what is this reality? How does it work? What does it mean that everything is energy? What does it mean that most of it is just space? And what does it mean in my life and in my practical day-to-day life? Because it has been proven by quantum physics. So if you just look into that and say, what does it mean to me, for me? And then you don't necessarily have to call it law of attraction, but it's just like, okay, so what does that mean? And how can I use it? I think it will lead you one path for sure.
So you started the company many years ago, and before you had this strong realization of something that we're just talking about, but you were already having success before then. Now looking back, did you try to apply this framework to what you've done before? Like, were you already applying some sort of positive mindset or some sort of subtle visualization without knowing you were doing this before?
I would say that before, even though I knew about the secret, I learned a little bit about the law of attraction and Eckhart Tolle. I wasn't implementing that as much in my life, to be honest. And I was very much a hardworking hustle entrepreneur, very much. But it's almost like I took the long path to success, because there's, like, if you think about this, there's a short way and there's a very long way, and the short way is through your energy and your thoughts and visualizations and meditations, all of that, and then the long way is through physical actions and through grind, and you might still get there. It is a long way and it is limited. So I took the long way for sure. And I did, of course, we are successful, but we're not as successful as we would have been, for example, right? But if I was implementing what I was learning, but everything is perfect, honestly. I'm not regretting anything, because it brought me to this moment, and this moment is the greatest moment, right? So there's never any regret about anything, even though it was very hard at times in terms of, like, building a company and doing it all by yourself, and lots of things happened throughout the years. But at the same time, of course, I wouldn't change anything.
Was there really a tipping point of some sort where, when Alexandra started visualization, then the company's growth started to even become faster? Was there really such?
Yeah, I think that.
Oh.
Well, so when I learned about Joe Dispenza's work, and I started looking into his work, and I was doing that not so much from company success point of view, but more from health point of view, because I had a health condition that I wanted to heal. And Dr. Joe Dispenza is very much in the healing world. So I learned his meditations in order to heal myself, and I did. And once I healed myself, I had that condition for maybe 20 years. I don't know, crazy number long time. And then I was able to heal it. And then it just was such a strong proof that, there's, like, definitely something to this. And even though I never doubted, because, like, in order to make it happen, you have to believe in it, right? There cannot be any doubts. But once it really happened, I asked myself, how else can I use this? This is great. And then I started continued meditations, and I said, okay, let me do something for my business as fun. And then I started visualizing as being featured in Forbes. That happened. And then I was like, this is great. What else can I do? And then I visualized this big social media following that now we have, and that happened. And now I visualized celebrities sharing our brand, and Kardashians shared our journals, and Richard Branson's family shared our journals just on their own. All of that is just could not have happened if I was sending emails, or if you know what I mean. So yeah, again, like, once you experience it, once you experience something beyond just hearing other people doing that, or other people beyond reading the books, once you have that experience, then your belief turns into the knowing. And once you know that is true, like, it's so much more powerful. Every single successful experience that you have with meditation or visualization meditation just gives you more and more and more energy to do even greater or to do more, because then the next meditation has that the success of the previous meditation in it, so your knowing is growing stronger and stronger, and you become just so much more powerful in that.
I'm sure for the more analytical minded listeners out there, there's gotta be a lot of skepticism hearing this, but it sounded like through your own direct experience, right? You visualized certain scenarios, and after some time that particular scenario happened, and
it was very
like
specific. And that is the beauty of visualization, because when you visualize something very specific and that specific thing happened, for example, like the Forbes, right? It wasn't like New York Times, it wasn't Goop or any other large publication, it was Forbes, right? It was a specific publication, a specific feature. So it was exactly what I was visualizing. And that is the direct evidence, right? So you cannot argue with that. It's hard to have that coincidence in life, because before that, for the, 5 years of business, we haven't been featured in Forbes, right? But then after I visualized, let's say for a month or how long it took, then we were, right? So it cannot be a coincidence, right?
Alexandra, can you share a little bit more about, can you reshare the whole story of how one day you decide to sit down and visualize a very specific outcome, which is for the Big Life Journal to be featured on Forbes? Can you retell that story a little bit?
Yeah. When I had my success with the healing, I was curious, like, okay, so what can I do with these meditations? And then I thought, okay, well, it would be cool to be featured in Forbes. And I was meditating anyway, every single day. So I was like, I'm meditating anyway, so why don't I just include, this visualization piece during the meditation of visualizing Forbes and us being featured in Forbes. And I was using specifically Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditations, but it could be anything really. In his specific meditation, he has a meditation which is called Change in Boxes. And it's essentially the quantum field has unlimited number of boxes, which are realities, like where you are in a certain box right now in this reality where you are. And change in boxes, you're essentially, walking in out of one box into another box. In that second box, you have that desired event. So essentially, I was walking into the box of reality where we were featured in Forbes. And that was the essence of the meditation. And I wasn't like very committed to it or obsessed about it. It was just like something I was doing as I was meditating anyway. And then one day I was sitting and I was checking my email, and I had the media alert email where every time we're featured anywhere, we have a media alert. And there it was, like there was a media alert. It was like Forbes, Big Life Journal. I was like, what? And it was just like that moment where I was so extremely happy, but not about the actual feature, but about the fact that I knew that I made it happen, and I made it happen with my visualization, because it just expanded my understanding of what is possible, what this world is about, and how we are able to create with our thoughts. So I was very happy about that from that perspective. Then I was like, I realized my power, and that was cool.
Must be a very magical experience.
It was a surreal moment. I was like, I cannot believe this is happening. This is so great. I just made this happen by thinking about it.
How long did you do the visualization before the Forbes feature actually came out?
Well, I mean, about the Forbes specifically, maybe for a month or so.
So after that, did you have any other success stories other than
Yes. So after that, I was visualizing the million followers, and now I'm just doing it kind of like my own way. So I'm not using anybody's frameworks. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm visualizing specific scenes from whatever I want to happen. So for example, if I'm visualizing us turning 1 million, I would visualize, a scene of where I'm looking at my phone and I see that number turning from 999,000 to 1 million, and how I'm so happy and I'm feeling the feeling, and I'm visualizing our team celebrating. So like a specific moments of that thing already happening in the moment and reliving that moment. I'm visualizing, us being a brand that is shared by celebrities, and it is happening right now. Just 2 days ago, Richard Branson's family shared our journals on Instagram. So it's the moment, right? It's the moment. I'm visualizing the moments of us learning the news, celebrating the news. How am I going to feel when this happens? And I'm constantly in the knowing that it's happening or it has happened, right? I no longer in the state of wanting anything. It's more of, if there is a desire, I have it. So there's no space for wanting, because the wanting means lacking. So visualization helps you with that. So essentially, you want to always move into the state where you already have what you want. And that is the purpose of visualization, because by having this mental imagery, you are moving yourself in that state. So it's just a tool, really.
When you visualize specific outcomes, for example, celebrities sharing your product, perhaps a more scientific way to try to describe it is the CEO coming out with a growth strategy for the Big Life Journal. But then after the strategy is set or after the visualization has begun, did you or the team actually specifically try to go out and try to get celebrities to?
So here's how I think it works. So once you visualize, you have a specific kind of like energy field, right? And that energy field could attract specific ideas and thoughts. And those ideas and thoughts could lead you to those actions that are necessary, right? So, or it could happen on its own. So it's kind of like, however it happens, it doesn't really matter. Either you do something or it just happens on its own. Like in our case, like we haven't done anything for that, but it's of course, like we've done for Instagram, for example, we've been posting, right? And what could have happened is like my visualization has led me to thinking of a specific post, because the moment that we turned from 1 million, from 990 something to 1 million, it was a pretty fast time frame. So at some point we gained 50,000 followers over the course of, I don't know, a couple of days, but it was because two specific posts went viral, right? And for those posts to be created, like the action had to be taken. And what it could happen is during the visualization, you can get that idea, or after the visualization, you can see something that will prompt this idea and you take that action. So it could be that visualization takes you to certain actions, or I think it's both, right? It takes you to certain actions and it just sets things into motion that are outside of your control.
You're a successful entrepreneur running a successful business who believe in visualization. If I were to walk to the Silicon Valley and talk to entrepreneurs, most Silicon Valley investors and entrepreneurs are not like that, at least not publicly. Is there anything that you think we could tell them to help them keep a more open-minded attitude about this topic that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think open-minded is a great quality, number one. And number two is, if I'm the type of person, if something works for someone, I'm all in. I was like, I want to try it. Like, oh my gosh, it worked for you. Let me try this. And if it worked for you, like it has to work for me. So that's how I am. Like if I see somebody's manifesting with their visualizations, I'm like, oh my gosh, of course I want to try it. I want to do it myself. And also believe, like, for this to work, you have to know it works. It's kind of like that. And visualization is we learned math in growing up. We learned reading growing up. Visualization is another skill that we have as human beings that we have not been taught as children, and is so extremely powerful. And it's like, why wouldn't I use it? And why wouldn't I use it? If there's a scientific evidence that studies that show that all successful athletes in the world visualize, right? And there's so much proof that athletes and musicians have experienced so much success by visualizing. So why wouldn't we visualize as entrepreneurs? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I just think that visualization is a tool that humans don't use enough. And it's extremely powerful, and it works for many people, and you just need to learn how to use it. And then once you start using it and you see your first result, and you cannot unsee it, you're like, oh my gosh. When you see it in your own life, at least one thing, you will be 100%. It's moving from a belief to the knowing. Once you know, there's no way back. You start using it all the time.
Yeah, So I actually invited a Stanford professor, Dr. James Doty, to this podcast to talk about manifestation in a scientific manner a few episodes ago. He actually wrote 2 books on manifestation. So we're talking about a Stanford professor who's a neurosurgeon, who's a successful entrepreneur in his own right, who tries to explain manifestation in a scientific way to the world. So I think increasingly, while I understand in some communities, many people still see this as a fake pseudoscience, there are people in the world out there, including yourself, who have had tremendous success with direct experience that you believe this works and you are successful and you think that the whole visualization has a direct attribution to your success. So those are facts. And I just think that if we can all keep an open mind, maybe together we can come up with a more, I guess, agreeable scientific explanation for all of these.
Yeah. And I also think that whatever you believe is true in your life, and we are just as powerful. If you believe or you know that you can create tremendous results by meditation, visualization, you will. If you believe that you only can do it by working hard, that's going to be true for you. What you need to recognize is your own power and how powerful you are in terms of creating your own, the version of reality. And then you just ask, okay, so why does it have to be hard? Why can't it be easy? And then you just make it easy inside yourself first. Like, make it the world easy, and the entrepreneurship is easy, and money making easy, and business easy inside yourself first, and then that will become your reality. And it's just how powerful everyone is, and all of us are.
It's kind of fascinating that you talk about this, because for most people, there's this belief that building a startup is very, very hard. And you can also say that by itself is its own manifestation. It is a belief that most people hold on to. And maybe it doesn't have to be that way.
Oh, for sure, 100%. Like, you are so absolute. You are so powerful. You create everything around yourself, and you are the screen, right? You are the movie, and whatever you believe, essentially, the universe will rearrange itself to display it to you, and that's how powerful you are. And if you believe it's hard, it is hard for you, and it's for sure like real hardships, like real serious challenges, not like made up in your mind. You always ask yourself, where is the source? Like, where is the source of this? And I know for sure, like, even my brother, he is also an entrepreneur, and it is hard. It's hard for him. But it's such a strong connection to his beliefs. And if you want to see a direct correlation between your beliefs and the world that you live in, is just listen to yourself talking, and listen to your thoughts, and listen to how do you describe like business? How do you describe money making? How do you describe in your mind? And that's exactly how it is, right, in your world. But how I describe it is exactly how it is in my world. I always catch myself, and it's rewiring of the brain, essentially. It's a rewiring of your brain, but also it's changing the energy field in order for the thoughts to change. And I always catch myself, for example, if I think of something, there's another quote which I loved. I think it was from this book, Happy Pocket Full of Money. It was, the universe has no shortages. There's no shortage of anything, no shortage of time. There's no shortage of any resource. But the shortage exists inside of us, and it's displayed to us because we're so absolute and we're so powerful. So if you think from that perspective, you always ask yourself, like, how do I view money? How do I view time? How do I think about money? How do I think about time? How do I talk about money? How do I talk about time? And I always catch myself. And every time I say, even right now, it's fourth quarter, right? It's busy time. It's Black Friday. For many e-commerce businesses, like, it's the prime time. And we're basically day to day was like, oh my gosh, one more day. And this could be this essence of like, there's not enough time. But every time I catch myself, it's like, there is so much time, and actually on a deeper level there is no time. So time is an illusion, and you can extend it or you can expand it with your mind. So it's almost like bringing yourself back to those learnings or fundamentals that and then stopping yourself in that moment. And whenever you feel a shortage of a lack of something or anything, you're just like, no. Like, I don't want my world to display that back to me. So let's think about from like, okay, there's unlimited time, there's unlimited resources, there is unlimited of money, all of that. And you start thinking that way on purpose.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's beautiful. Also, I think annoying to most people, many of the biggest achievers in the world have either been consciously manifesting or unconsciously visualizing on their own way to success. For example, I actually think Sam Altman is probably one of the most badass manifestors in the world. If you were to read his historical interviews, quotes with a manifestation lens on, a lot of things that he talks about is all about manifestation and breaking limiting beliefs. Sam Altman appears to have very few limiting beliefs, right? I think he has a few famous quotes. I'm just paraphrasing here. For example, you'll be surprised by how much you can bend the world with your own will. Things like that, or something like you should work on something that's very hard, because when you work on something that's very hard, the entire world will help you out. So I think it all has to do with the type of language and the terms that you use to describe certain concepts. Maybe he has been consciously choosing very scientific terms so that Silicon Valley people will still because that's the kind of languaging that the Silicon Valley community subscribes to. But it's kind of fascinating if you were to put on a manifestation lens. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs, in my mind, have been manifesting all their lives.
Yeah.
So it's quite fascinating.
Also, they had this very strong knowing that they are successful. Like for somebody like Elon Musk or even Jeff Bezos, maybe they don't necessarily talk about manifestations, but what they had even early on, it's the knowing. It's the knowing. And that's where I'm going to be successful. There's no way. And I had the same knowing. So like even looking back when I wasn't even very intentionally visualizing in the early days, I remember we had our first podcast for children, which eventually ended up having 12 million downloads. It was very successful, and we stopped producing it because it kind of ran its course, but it was a huge success. It brought us a lot of business and a lot of brand recognition. But when we started creating that podcast, I remember for some reason I had a very strong knowing that we're going to be number one on the charts of Apple Podcasts. And I had such a strong knowing that I was telling everybody, even though I usually don't do that, but I was like, I was so proud of what we were making. I was like, this is amazing. Like what we're making is amazing. We're going to be number one. And we were. And on that day when we were released, we're number one on Apple Podcast charts. That's what they have. So maybe not necessarily they talk about manifestation, visualization in that sense, but the knowing brings the same result as your visualization, because the knowing gives you the energy, the vibration, brings you the certain ideas, so it's the same result, but that is kind of like conviction.
Yeah, it's the same thing. The more mainstream way to describe this is strong conviction, strong determination, unwavering self-confidence that you believe you are going to be successful no matter what. So it sounds like it's just the same thing with different terms.
It's the same thing. And visualization helps you get there. So basically, if you're liking that, if you're liking the knowing, if you're liking the strong conviction and your success and the thing that you want is already happening or to you or will happen to you like soon, right? Soon. That's what visualization is for, essentially. Because by having that mental imagery, you are convincing yourself, because like even when you start visualizing, you will discover that the first time you do it, it's hard because you're like, I can't even really imagine this happening to me. Like this is so big, or this is like the first time, and you maybe imagine it, but you don't get the feeling because it's so distant. But the more you do it, it's like you're almost like immersing yourself in that reality, and then you start believing that it could be true, and then you start believing more and more and more, and then you start knowing knowing, and that's when it happens to you. So that's what visualization is for. And maybe some people have that conviction from day one, right? And they don't need to visualize. But it's basically coming to the same result.
For people who are starting their first business who have not done visualization before, can you share maybe a little bit in more details on how they can potentially do visualization for the first time, and even better, build a habit of visualization?
Yeah. So if I was starting my business now, I would visualize from the first day. I would spend an hour visualization, more, 2 hours. And I would just be successful business from day one. So what you want to do is you have, again, it's beyond believing. It's the knowing, right? So I know I am the greatest, skincare company in the world. I am the most successful. And then what you could visualize is immediately from day one, you could visualize the impact that you're making. For example, you could visualize people enjoying your product, having results from your product, being happy about the product, leaving you reviews and being, thanking you, showing you gratitude, and do that from the first day and constantly. So be in that energy of success, right? Immediately from the day one. And we are so used to always waiting for the external evidence to feel a certain way. And, I have to have a certain amount of money in my bank account to feel successful. Or I have to, this app show me a number on my account in order to feel influential or to feel impactful. But you are like giving all your power away to this like external evidence things that happen, that have to happen for you to feel a certain way. Whereas what you want to do is you want to take all your power back and essentially feel that way now in the moment. I'm influential, I am successful. And like the more you feel it, and then actually everything around you will be transformed based on that feeling, and you will start getting different levels of ideas. And it's like, for example, like I would say, like there's a big difference of you thinking or knowing that you have 1,000 followers, right? And you creating content for 1,000 followers versus you creating the content for 1,000,000 followers. This is a different content. It's a different content from like you even approaching content, you even thinking about the content. And from day one, you got to create content for 1,000,000 followers. Like day one, you creating content, like for the podcast, every time I'm recording an episode, I'm recording for 1,000,000 downloads, or 10 million downloads, right? So I never record for whatever, I don't even know. I never check what the downloads are, but like every time I'm doing that. So every time you are showing up on social media, like you showing up for millions of followers, right? And that's what I would start with, like for sure. Like if you do this, you will quadruple your speed of success for sure.
Fascinating. How does a visualization session take 1 hour? Are there multiple scenarios or goals?
Yes, I have. So I don't have, so I don't sit for 1 hour usually, but I do have on my phone, I have a timer. So every time I visualize, I set that I start the timer so I know, okay, so how long I visualize today. And it could be like in between of things, like in the morning when I wake up, I could do 20 minutes and then I stop the timer because my kids woke up and then I had to do, other things. But then kids go to school, I maybe have another 10 minutes before I work and I time myself. And also I have a tracker as well. So every single day I track my visualizations and I write down how many minutes I visualize. So maybe an hour is like my goal, but sometimes it's 40 minutes, sometimes it's 35 minutes, sometimes 50 minutes. But I also like daydream in the idle time. So for example, besides like formal visualization sessions, for example, I would daydream, because what I noticed is usually when I'm doing something like walking somewhere or cooking dinner, whatever, I tend to think about the problems, right? I was like, oh, what's going on? What are the challenges? I need to do this, I need to do that. So instead of doing that now, oh no, why would I waste this time? Now, again, I'm thinking about things. I would be, okay, oh, that's so great that like this celebrity just posted about us. And like as I'm cooking, like I don't necessarily have my eyes closed and I visualize sitting down, but I'm still constantly daydreaming about my things, right? So I use the idle time as well. Whatever, like as you're doing something, you can also bring yourself back into reliving, like you're living those moments over and over again.
Yeah. Is the whole idea of visualization you imagine certain scenarios, but it is important for you to actually feel the feeling.
Yeah, it's
Is that the most critical
the
aspect?
feel the feeling. Yeah, the feeling is super important. So it's like it is, that's what creates a certain field of energy around you, and that's what attracts certain thoughts, the feelings. It's almost like when Dr. Joe Dispenza is a great person to explain this. Like there's the electromagnetic field around us, and the heart produces magnetic field, right? So, and when you feel, you're essentially producing a certain magnetic field around yourself with your heart, and that magnetic field, that's what sets things into motion, including attracting to you certain ideas and thoughts, and also setting other things into motion that are out of your control. So yeah, the feeling is very important. And like maybe at some point, like initially, it's hard to produce the feeling, but the more you do it, like the more vivid your visualizations are, the easier it will become for you to produce the feeling. And sometimes like you would be so immersed into that moment, you like catch yourself like really feeling like to the more, it was like there's so many times like I was crying during my visualizations because I was so happy that it was happening to me. And again, it's almost like the more you learn about the reality, and that everything is this that we are seeing here is the hologram, like an illusion, and you think, okay, well, why do I like, so it's a very, like whoever said that, I don't remember whose quote it was, like it's an illusion but it's a persistent illusion. Yes, it's very persistent and it looks like it's real, but in the way it's like, how is this more real than when I'm closing my eyes and I'm in that reality, right? It's all the same. And it's basically like it's like, yeah, maybe it's like a delusional in a way. There's like, okay, this is what's happening here. It's like, this is old news, right? This is old news. Like, this is not what is happening right now. So it's almost like you essentially becoming so powerful, creating with your mind, then like sometimes you, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, he says like 1 foot in this real world and 1 foot in the quantum field, having both feet, like, and you have 1 foot there, 1 foot there. And essentially when you start living this way, it's almost like, yeah, 1 foot I'm here, okay, I'm still in this world, but also I have another foot in this quantum field, or it's like imaginary world or whatever. It's like my world that I'm trying to create. And that's where I think that's when you really start seeing really big results in your life.
So with this realization, how do you manage your team? Are there any employees who don't subscribe to this scope thinking?
And our team, like most of the team is very on board with like visualizations and meditations. Even when we were launching a new product, it was a task. Like I said, everybody has to visualize success.
Wow.
But essentially, what I do now is I also visualize my team being extremely successful. And in the past, what I would, when I had an employee and everybody works their own way and it has their own shortcomings and strengths and weaknesses. But now, like, I have a marketing director in my mind. She's the greatest marketing director in the world. Like, that's how she is in my mind. And it's like, she produces brilliant ideas. She's the greatest. I have the greatest marketing director. And it's like, and she transforms into that. Because like everybody displays your expectations, right? So this is your perception. Every person in your life is how you perceive them. And that's how powerful you are. That's how absolute you are. And why would I perceive your weaknesses? Well, I will only want to perceive you as the best employee in the world, because that's who I want to experience, right? I always experience my perceptions. So I also visualize that. Like I visualized at some point, one of my visualizations was my entire team like holding hands, and we are like so extremely powerful, and I could like visualize the energy coming out of us as a team. That I would constantly like visualize like the energy of the team, the strength of the team, and how all like extremely powerful we are as a team together. and would be like one of my visualizations, for example. Now it's like a next level in terms of me thinking about your performance and how I'm going to give you a performance review. What are you not doing right? I'm visualizing you being the best employee in the world. If you are not, either you are going to leave the company on your own, or it's going to just happen, and somebody is the greatest person going to come into my company because of my visualizations, or you are going to become the greatest employee in the world. So there are two outcomes: either you, because you can't match my perception, or you become that. So basically that's my leadership task at the moment, is just perceive everybody as the greatest employees in their roles.
Fascinating. Has anyone come to you and ask you, so does that mean that we can just sit there, visualize all day, and we don't need to work hard? Like how has that?
Well,
has that question
it is
come up,
it is it is possible, because like even if you listen to Sadhguru, he has this viral YouTube video on how to manifest anything or something like that. I mean, it has, I don't know, tens of millions of views, and basically he says that it is possible not to do anything, and just with your intention create things. If you are meant to do something, you will. Like it's like the action itself will be taken if it has to be taken. It's not a question whether or not I should do something, or it's like now you're asking a question about the process of how it's going to happen, but the how it's going to happen is not the focus. The focus is on it has already happened, right? And that's where the focus should be. But how you're going to get there, whether or not you're going to take actions, whether or not somebody else will take actions, whatever is going to happen in between is not of your concern. So it could happen that you will be taking lots of actions. Like right now, I'm actually working quite a lot. I am. But what I'm doing is like, and I was just thinking about it yesterday, because first of all, I love working. Like this is something that brings me great satisfaction. But what I was doing yesterday, I was working for nonstop, I don't know, maybe like 5 hours, just nonstop. And it was action after action after action that was like an idea came, I do it. An idea came, I do it. An idea came, I do it. And then in the end, after the 5 hours, like, whoa, like, first of all, where did this all ideas come from? Second of all, like, I've done so much. And my mind is never in the way that when an idea comes, I never question it, or I never was like, was this a good idea or not? I was like, should I do this or not? Once I visualize the end result, then I sit down, and it's just boom, 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 boom. And it's like one idea after another, and then one action after another. But it's just how it's happening for me. It doesn't have to happen the same for everybody else. For some people, there could be no action. Or for example, in the Forbes situation, there was no action taken in the physical world for this to happen, but it happened. So, you will see how it will happen.
How does this trickle down to how you operate the company? For example, do you care how many hours each employee works? Do you work 4 days a week? How's that? Is there any policies?
I work every day, but I don't know. It's not an 8-hour workday for sure, because once the kids get home, I don't work. But I don't think about these details anymore. To me, it's the how. Like it's the how, and I will see how it will happen. And again, when you are in the reality that you want, for example, like in my case, would be like we're the number one top most successful brand that is, all this impact, right? And I'm envisioning and visualizing all this impact and how it would happen, how many hours we work, or what people will stay in my company, who is going to leave, who's going to come. Like none of that is my concern, to be honest. I don't think about that at all. I don't think about this at all. So because it happens and I'm just witnessing, it's like, interesting. Now this person came. I wonder like why. And it's there's the book by Michael Singer, the Surrender Experiment, right? And it's such an interesting book because like he grew his company too, and he was like, oh, interesting. Now this person became the employee. I wonder why, right? And then it's almost the same way, because like somebody comes in with like a new idea to implement. I'm like, Sure, let's do it. Like, I mean, I don't know why you got this idea and how this idea will lead to anything. It's also one thing that I found it was extremely helpful in my work, and it's just in life in general. It's like we never know why things are happening. For example, we launched new 2 products recently this fall, and we had a production delay because there was a mistake in the product, and the product was coming from China. And so we already pre-sold the product, right? So we already like pre-selling, and the production delay meant that the shippings will be delayed later than what we promised. So it was bad news. But what happened in the end is like, so in the moment when we learned about that mistake, we're like, oh, no, it's going to add 2 more weeks to the production and all these things. And then let's say like after a week, we are learning that the East Coast in the United States, the port is on the strike of a century, like completely frozen. All the shipments that come from overseas completely frozen. Nothing's being delivered on the East Coast. And the fact that we were delayed by, let's say, like 10 days of production, we were able to ship to the West Coast instead, but we were routing to the East Coast, everything. And we were like completely avoided months and months of delay. And it was like, whoa, like, so I have no idea why things are happening in the moment, like why this person left, why this person came, why this mistake happened, and how it's like all arranging itself in the back end. So like now it's never as like nothing is good or bad. It's like, great, like we'll see why this happens. Like we'll see why this is happening right now. We'll see why this is occurring. So this helped me tremendously. It's essentially anything that is happening in the business that could be perceived as bad news. To me, it's never bad news anymore. It's never bad news anymore. It's always like, interesting. We'll see how this will turn out. Like why this is happening right now.
Fascinating. How has this had any impact for you as a parent and how you educate your children?
Well, interesting question. I mean, like, for sure, like I try to teach by modeling. For example, like I don't necessarily make my kids sit down and meditate or visualize, but I do visualize and meditate in front of them. And when and I have my journal, right? When I journal, when I track my visualizations, and they constantly ask me, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I explain, here's what I'm doing. I am convinced that this like has the effect, and maybe not at the moment, but eventually. And also, I always remind my kids how powerful they are. You're so great. You're essentially a piece of one big consciousness. I have this kind of like big concepts, and I do say that all the time, but I don't necessarily expect any discussion or any understanding maybe in the moment, but I want them to hear that, like hear this all the time, and have those messages floating in space. And also, I am very relaxed parent in a way that they will experience what they want to experience or meant to experience. It's them, right? It's their own path. But there is a reason why I'm their parent, right? So maybe I'm their parent to show them this path. That's also possible. And I'm doing that by modeling. But whatever life they will lead, it's completely their choice, their not even their choice, but like they will live what they live. So in that sense, like they will see what they meant to see in the moment. They will experience what they meant to experience, even maybe outside of home. They will hear something negative towards them. There's like they're meant to hear that for some reason that will lead them to something. So it's for me, I'm never too obsessed about anything anymore. It's almost like, okay, this is their experience. I'm their parent for some reason, and I think it's because to like model this way, right? Whether or not they're going to follow it, it's like their experience, like, and however it's going to play out, we'll see. But so I'm much more kind of like a relaxed parent from that perspective.
Do you still have any value systems that you still like to try to install to your children? For example, hardworking or grit or anything like that?
Not anymore. I mean, when in the beginning, for sure, like I thought it was the answer, like growth mindset and like persistence and working hard. Not anymore. I guess because you can create without doing anything, right? In essence, you can get to that level of consciousness. But to me, what I would want from my children is to observe So whatever I'm going through, whatever I'm learning, whatever I'm creating in my life, I'm sharing it with them, or I will continue to share it with them. It's like, hey guys, look, like this is awesome. Like I did this and this happened. I did this and that happened out in front of them. This is, what I'm seeing, and have them learn from that. But for sure, like I learned that, you don't need to work hard, even though this is exactly how I was raised. Like the working hard, and if you don't work hard, essentially you're going to end up homeless, right? And that fear that I was carrying it for a very long time. And I was such a workaholic. I was in my grad school, I was voted by my entire class is the most likely to work 80 hours a week. That was I got that award. I was awarded for that. But now I'm like, this is one way to live your life, but this is not the only way.
That's fascinating, because as a parent, sometimes my kid also worries me. For example, she'll exhibit certain habit that will be considered as negative by me. For example, I sometimes half jokingly say that she's very, very sloppy. She'll come back home and just start chilling and will forget about her responsibilities. And of course, me as a parent will want to try to help her to build a healthy habit. Because in my mind, I still believe, yes, being hardworking is good. Having grit, some kind of rigor is better than, I guess, relatively more traditional mindset. In a way, you could also say all of those are limiting beliefs, right? And in a way, that's also something that I've been struggling with myself on how I can have the right balance to raise our children.
I also think that the way that you responded to her, it's also meant to be. Okay, so maybe we can talk about no free will, right? But this is the parent that she needs for some reason, and that's how you are displaying yourself, right? So like nothing that you do is ever wrong, and it just has to be for some reason like that, and everything is perfect. So that's maybe what she needs, right? And then another child needs something else, and they have a different parent. So from that perspective, I wouldn't worry about that too much. And it's just, kind of think that on the greatest level is just everything is, this moment is a perfect moment. It's exactly how it needs to be.
So let's talk about no free will. Can you share more about your take on this topic?
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand it and really grasp if there is a no free will. But essentially what the idea is, or strong belief is that we actually don't control anything, in a way that whatever is happening in our life is completely out of our control, and it just comes from the fact that everything that is happening, all your thoughts, all your actions, all your, even like the actions like speaking and moving and thinking and looking and your attention, it's all individual entities existing on their own, and you're not choosing your thoughts, you are not choosing your actions, you are realizing as they come. So let's say your thought occurred to you and you have not chosen it, but it had come to you in that specific thought, and that thought generated a specific action, and the action generated a specific result, but you have not chosen any of that. So from that perspective, of course, there's this level of disappointment, right? Your ego is very disappointed that you actually have not done anything in your life yourself, not have chosen anything. But also the question is, who are you really? Who are you? If you're just the screen or the space, you're actually not doing anything. You're just the projector that is projecting. But on the other level, it actually brings a lot of freedom and peace. For example, in your case, if you think that there is no free will, the way that you are responding to your daughter, you don't choose that, and it's just happening on its own. So it releases you from any guilt, any self-guilt, or accusing anybody else of anything, because no one has any choice. So from that perspective, life becomes much easier, and you're just like, okay, this moment is perfect as it is happening for some reason, and I'm just an observer of this moment, even though this moment comes from you, the speaking that is occurring, or the thoughts that are occurring. You might think that this is me doing that, but you're not doing that, you're just observing everything. Then it just becomes you essentially watching a movie playing out, right? So from that perspective, life becomes very easy and very simple, and there's nothing to do. There's absolutely nothing to do. There's just to watch of what is happening around you.
That's fascinating. Have you talked about this with your colleagues or your families? I'm curious what people around you say about this?
Well, Scott, my husband, I mean, he believes in no free will for sure, but from a little bit a different lens. I mean, there are a lot of people that are that are vocal. Sam Harris, for example, he is one of them. He's very vocal about that there's no free will. The people write books about it, but they're not so much from the perspective of you are the screen, you are the greater consciousness, but more from the perspective of, oh, your thoughts are just the result of everything that has happened to you previously. So you're a product of all the things that have happened to you, and you have no control over your thoughts, and therefore you don't choose them, and therefore you don't choose your actions, and therefore you don't choose your life. So from that perspective, like, there's a lot of people that talk about that, and I'm not so much interested about what others think about this. I'm more interested in what does it mean for me, and what does it mean for my life, and does it change anything, and what does it bring to me? And in essence, what has brought to me is more peace. And why would I want more peace, right? More peace in a way that, of course, I get into the moments where I still think that I'm doing things, like I'm still the doer. I am in those moments sometimes. But if, let's say, if it becomes like too intense in terms of there's like a lot happening around me, and there's a lot of events and a lot of action, and I recognize that my mind becomes very busy, I start reminding myself, like, wait a minute, it is all happening on its own, and I'm just an observer, and I bring myself back to that understanding that this is all just happening on its own, and the thoughts come on their own. I don't choose these thoughts. Let's detach again and like become the space, become the screen, and then helps me to really find the peace again, and find the detach from the outcome much easier, and be much less stressed. I mean, there should be no stress at all if you're not doing anything. So I felt definitely more peace with that understanding.
For your visualization and manifestation, have there been any instances where you try to visualize certain things, but it just didn't work, or hasn't worked yet?
Well, it's just a matter of time, right? I mean, of course, I always have new things that I'm visualizing. Well, I don't think about it this way. And I think that's the most important thing. If you're checking if it worked or hasn't worked, that's what's stopping you in a way. I never do. I look at this differently. I look at this, okay, this is one hologram in front of me. Whatever, something is like projected. I have another hologram in my mind, right? And they're both real to me in a way. Like, nothing is real, but they both have the same validity to me. And the question you ask me is like, has this hologram projected like what this hologram is projecting? But like, to me, it's almost like doesn't matter. I know it will, but in my mind, I'm already living that reality. Like, and that's the key. Like, what you are aiming for is to live that, like to live the reality that you are essentially not even wanting, because there's no wanting, like to live the reality you want to live, right? So to live it right now in your mind, in your body, in your essence, and not be so immersed or like so dependent on this other hologram that is in front of you, because like that is what's stopping everyone. Because like you are constantly, has it come yet, or how's this looking, or it's like, why are you so immersed in this one, right? Like, why you're not immersed in the other one? And they're both as real. And I think that where I am at this moment, like I'm not checking in, and like sometimes like things happen, like let's say like a celebrity has shared something in this hologram. It's like, oh cool, like this hologram is catching up, but it's like not to me, like I'm not necessarily waiting for that, right? To feel great. Like I'm already feeling great. Like in my reality, it has already happened 10 times. Like, right?
Fascinating.
Yeah. So to me, kind of like I look at it this way.
So it sounds like in your imagination, your imagination and the 3D reality is of the same importance to you, of the same validity. It sounds like the key here is, say, certain things having X million followers. Maybe this is some visualization or imagination that you're having. Whether this real world 3D reality, you have much fewer followers. The key here is that this does not bother you because you already have it in this imaginary world of yours.
Well, I think,
And the key, mhm.
yeah, I think it's also like the way that the words they use in like this is the real world and that is the imaginary world. Again, it's just the asking yourself what is real, right? And how real this world is, the one that you are perceiving with your five senses. And it's going back to, looking up these facts and studying the reality. What is the whole, like, how real is this and the nature of it, because it is an illusion in essence. It is a hologram, right? But it's a persistent one, and it's the one that we give 100% attention to. But the key here is like you are building up the skill of giving the 90% attention, and then 80% attention, and then 70% attention, and then realizing that when you close your eyes, the world that you have like in your imagination is the same hologram, is the same projection as you have it when you open your eyes, because it's also created by your consciousness. It's just like you don't have the five senses in it, but it's just one aspect of it, but it's also created by your consciousness. It's same way when you open your eyes. So it's almost like detach from this as the only truth. This is not the only truth. Like this is not the all there is. There's like we only perceive what we perceive with five senses, but there's so much more besides that. It's almost like really expanding your power. It's almost like you were so limited with your little flashlight and look in this little dot, but it's like, whoa, it's like the entire field of all the possibilities and all that there is, like how the world actually is, the universe, the quantum field. And it's like you're expanding. Okay, now you're not necessarily perceiving it with your five senses, but the five senses, whatever is perceived by five senses, this is such a small percentage of all there is in the world, in the quantum field. It's just such a small percentage, 0.0000 variations of this reality happening right now in this moment in the quantum field. So just understanding that first, and then you giving yourself giving those things the same importance. This is as important as this. This reality is important as this reality, and kind of like living from that perspective. And then in the end, whatever you start perceiving, your five senses will match whatever you were perceiving with your eyes closed.
Yeah. This is extremely mind-blowing for many listeners, as I'm sure. But it sounds like the way I'm hearing, the key here is, say if you're visualizing something and the 3D reality has not caught up to the imagination, the key here is to not keep on asking yourself, oh, why is it not? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Because that will essentially, you'll be lacking instead of having. So that seems like the key here is to not mind this is not happening, because if you just believe that deeply believe this particular hologram will eventually catch up, and you fundamentally believe that you no longer need to check whether this is happening yet or not.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just understanding and learning about how things are and how things are created. Really, I think the more understanding you have, because if you're skeptical, right, and you're not sure about this information, so your mind needs more facts. It needs more convincing. And I think that's where it helps to dive into quantum physics, to dive into the books, to listen to more like people and scientists talking about this. And that's what your mind, the more facts you gather, the more your mind was like, okay, well, I guess that's how it works. And that's what the nature of the reality is. And that's when you will get that more and more, that conviction, that belief that you're looking for.
Yeah. This is such a fascinating conversation, Alexandra. Before we leave, are there any other interesting, fun stories about your practice or anything at all that you'd like to share with us?
The one thing I say is like when you get on this path of learning about who you really are, and what is really going on, you will start getting unusual, unexpected experiences. Things will start happening to you, and even physically to your body or to your mind, or that you have not expected, and that's the nature of things, whether or not like, you're looking for them. For example, I had a few of these, some people call them like mystical experience. I haven't had many of those, but I know that a lot of people start seeing different colors or something, right? Some strange things like that. It's almost like their abilities expand, right? And for me, I had a few of those, and it's a cool side effect. It's a cool side effect, and the more you get these things, the more you start realizing that actually whatever you are trying to discover is like so, like you start realizing you don't know anything, or like there's so much beyond that we can't even imagine. And even if you read about people, the yogis or people who have been meditating for years, like the things that they're able to do, like people walk on water and can produce fire with their hands. I mean, the crazy stuff like that real humans can do, or like bend metal by looking at metals. It's mind blowing, but it's possible. Humans are able to do that. And like once you start like, interesting, like why do I limit myself with just my physical actions and like waking up each morning, doing my work, checking emails, sending emails? Well, there's this whole world of this cool things like energy and thought and meditation and visualization. Why wouldn't I use this? It's almost like becoming superhuman, right? There's the book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural, or something like that. It's cool. It's why not? Why not experience that as well?
Awesome. Alexandra, thank you so much. Before you leave, is there any advice that you could give to other business owners or founders who are interested in stepping on the spiritual journey or start meditation practice? Is there any advice that you can share with them?
So I would do two things. First, I would start visualizing right away, day one of your business, even before you started your business. Like there should be like day zero. This is what they should teach in business schools, or just in any schools. And then the second, I would start listening to books, like books on this topic. And I mean, there's very spiritual books, like, for example, Sadhguru or Eckhart Tolle, all the basic fundamentals, conversations with God. So you can listen to those, or like very practical ones that are specifically on attracting abundance. For example, is the one that I mentioned, A Happy Pocket Full of Money, or like other ones that also talk about quantum field and quantum physics and how the energy field and how you can develop wealth consciousness. So definitely I would do, all of that work, like 50-50, like 50% of that and 50% of the physical actions.
Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. So we're very thankful for your time, and best of luck to your business and your visualization.
Thank you so
going
much for
forward as
inviting
well.
me. Thank you, Wei Ting. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you.